Episode 8, Crazy's House, Part B, 3 hours earlier. Gia stood on one side of the pool table, Crazy and Hazy on the other side of the table facing her. Lazy was over at the keg pouring into red Solo cups. What would make someone think I'm bad at hitting balls? Gia asked. The other three snickered as Lazy walked up carrying 4 cups, 2 by 2. Hazy and Crazy took the 2 outside cups, leaving 1 cup in each of Lazy's hands. Gia reached for the one in his right hand, the one closer to her, but he offered her the one in his left. I already took a sip out of this one, Lazy said. Gia took the one from his left hand and lifted it to her lips. She wasn't an expert at beer. The only time she tasted it was about 6 months ago when her new friends Jake and Cassie had attempted to ply her with beer so they could rape, torture and kill her as they did with all the other girls who were buried in their basement. Yes, that happened in a basement too, she realized. Jake kept giving her cans of some local beer. She remembered not liking the taste of the beer, but Jake and Cassie insisted she keep drinking because she would like the way it would make her feel. After 8 beers, they couldn't believe Gia was still standing. Jake only had 4, and his speech was beginning to slur. That's when the 3 of them, Jake, Cassie, and Gia, discovered that beer had no effect on her. Today, standing here in this basement with the red Solo cup at her lips, Gia realized she may have been no connoisseur of beers. But her beer smelled funny. Kind of like Cassie's cooking smelled funny when she'd poisoned it. Gia figured Lazy put something especially for her in it. She took a long sip and rolled the beer around on her tongue. She noticed all 3 men were looking at her now. Yup, there was something extra in this beer. She lowered the cup in her mouth, letting the beer in her mouth drain back into the cup, then pretended to swallow. The 3 men now looked away from her and at each other. It was a good thing this wasn't a poker game, Gia thought. Ah, she said, mock shivering. That hit the spot. Crazy had just drained his cup in 1 gulp and was going back to the keg for more. Hey, when you want more, just holler, Lazy said to Gia, taking out a vape pen. Gia smiled and set her cup down on the table. She readied her pool cue and took the shot she'd set up, but she hit a little too hard and sent the cue ball into one of the holes. You can't keep firing them like that. Gotta know when to take it easy, Lazy said. Gia looked up at him, puzzled. You scratched, Lazy explained. Scratched what? Gia asked. They all laughed. Come on, Lazy said, like you've never played pool before. I'm telling you, she's a ringer, Hazy giggled. This is all part of her hustle. She pretends like she's never played pool. Gia just shrugged and got ready to take the next shot. To her it was easy, but maybe she was just experiencing beginner's luck. Maybe she played pool before she lost her memory. She paused and decided to just ask straight out of nowhere. Hey, was there a school shooting near here, like in the last year or so? A school with a lion for a mascot? The 3 of them just stared at her for a moment. Geez, Tabby, Lazy said with a vacant look. Way to kill the buzz. Crazy mimed taking a hat off and put it over his heart, then ceremoniously poured some of his beer on the floor next to Hazy for Emerson High. Hazy took a step back to avoid the spilling beer, grumbling, What are you doing, man? It's my house, Crazy said. Well, it's my shoes, Hazy retorted. Lazy set his beer on the pool table right next to Gia's and looked something up on his phone. Emerson, Gia pondered. Where's that? 2 towns downriver, Lazy answered and showed Gia his phone. I'm not a local, Gia said. What does downriver mean? South, Hazy said. Gia peered at the screen. It was a headline from 8 months ago, Shooter opens fire on homecoming crowd. Gia read the blurb underneath the headline. 12 dead, 36 injured, shooter still at large. Classes canceled until further notice. My cousin went there, Crazy said. Got 3 bullets taken out of him. He survived, but he's in a wheelchair now. Quadriplegic. Sorry, Gia said, intentionally reaching for Lazy's beer. She raised it to her lips. It smelled like the way she remembered untainted beer tasting. Hey, Lazy said, noticing her attempting to drink his beer. That's mine. Oops, Gia said, putting his beer down and picking hers up. Once again, she was hit with that different smell. Well, okay. Someone was about to have a lot of fun, and it wasn't going to be any of these three creeps. She proceeded to gulp down her entire beer in front of them. Lazy couldn't hide a victorious grin. As Gia finished draining her cup, she turned to Crazy and Hazy, who had that same grin. Before Jake and Cassie, when Gia learned beer could not affect her, Gia was in the horrible place. The place where she'd awoken with these sinister arms. The place she had escaped from. That was where she learned she could not be poisoned, anesthetized, or in any way chemically compromised. Her body simply absorbed everything. Whatever was in those pills would have no effect on her. Now Gia showed Lazy her empty cup. Coming right up, Lazy said, taking her cup. Gia watched him go over to the keg. She took note that he kept his back to her as he poured. Gia took note of the way he bent a little further than he had to. Gia turned to Crazy and Hazy. Did they ever catch the person who did it? That's the fucked up part, Hazy said. He was a student, of course, as is the norm. He disappeared, Crazy said. And when we say disappeared, we don't mean he ran off and they went looking for him and couldn't find him. Lazy walked up and handed Gia her beer, saying, The cops got there and he ran back into the school, and nobody saw him after that. Cops were covering all the exits, never came out. It was dumb, Crazy stage whispered at Gia, who squinted back. D-U-M-B? Oh, it's dumb all right, Lazy laughed. Dumb is real, Crazy continued. They don't like it when I get all deep state on them. It's not just that, Hazy groaned. I'm smacking you the second the J word comes out of your mouth. Lazy read the confusion on Gia's face. You'll see, he said confidently. There's a system of tunnels throughout the country, Crazy started, looking insanely serious, like it was breaking his brain to be this serious. They linked every military base to every major metropolitan area in the country. Dumb, deep, underground military bases. Gia nodded again, lifting the red cup to her nose. Her new beer had that weird smell too. She took a sideward glance at the keg, trying to figure out from where exactly Lazy was getting the drugs he put in her drink. A branch of the tunnel system passes through Lincoln, where the school shooting was. Crazy went on. My cousin told me back in the 80s, a bunch of kids figured out where it was and dug a connecting tunnel. Lazy and Hazy busted out laughing. Poor kid, Lazy said, shaking his head. This is your brain on QAnon. So you believe the shooter escaped into the tunnels, Gia stated. They combed the school, Crazy said. Couldn't find him at all. But, Gia said, why didn't they find the tunnel entrance? It's like the entrance to Hogwarts, Hazy coughed, eliciting a guffaw from Lazy. No, hang on, there is an explanation, Crazy said. There's a movable wall somewhere in the school basement. It takes like 2 or 3 guys to move it. Crazy paused and gestured to Gia's arms. Or maybe one of you. The others laughed again. But Gia was intrigued. So there were some people waiting for him so they could help him escape. Don't encourage him. Hazy shook his head. Exactly, Crazy said. The deep state cabal made a deal with him. These school shootings have been designed to create an air of chaos and panic, ripening us for the new world order. What's that exactly? Gia asked. Crazy nodded as if proving a point. When the Jews take over? There it is, Hazy said, slapping Crazy across the face. See? Lazy said to Gia. Oh, Gia said, the J word, got it. Sorry man, I know you're Jewish, Crazy said to Hazy, but you have to admit. It doesn't matter who's Jewish or not, Hazy said. Taken to their end, every conspiracy theory ends with the Jews. Damn. 1. It's fucking low IQ, Lazy. Do some actual work. Read some actual books. I do, Crazy said. I follow the money, and you know who has all the money. Google the top 10 richest families in the world, Hazy said. I'll wait. Do it. All right, Crazy said, subdued all of a sudden. He lifted his phone and spoke into it. Top 10 richest families in the world. A voice came from his phone a second later. Here are the top 10 richest families in the world. Now what? Crazy asked Hazy. Tell me how many of them are Jewish, Hazy answered. Crazy looked at his phone and began scrolling, a sour smirk on his face. Where are they? Hazy pressed. Where are all the uber-wealthy Jews that have quote-unquote all the money? Crazy just shrugged, then perked up. Aha, Mark Zuckerberg. Hazy held up one finger. Mike Bloomberg, Crazy shouted. Lightning strikes twice, Hazy said, putting up another finger, making a peace sign, which he then turned into a middle finger, which he waved at Crazy. Don't bother looking anymore. I already know those are the only Jews you're going to find. And they're not even the richest. They're in the middle somewhere. Who needs reality TV with you guys around? Lazy quipped. He picked up a pool cue and began sinking balls. Are we going to get a game going or what? Lazy grinned. Gia took a swig from her beer, formulating a little game of her own. She purposely swallowed the rest of her beer and walked over to the keg. Anybody need a refill? Gia said. Whoa, slow down there, killer, Lazy said. No shit, what's that, your third? Hazy chimed. Gia shrugged and wobbled, pretending to be buzzed for their benefit. She slurred her speech a little as she said, I'm good, I'm just thirsty, that's all. The three men snickered. You a thirsty hoe, Gia? Crazy joked, making the others laugh out loud now. Gia did not have much time to look for whatever it was they were hiding the drugs in. Holding the solo cup and the keg's faucet, with one hand she casually felt around the back of the keg and found what felt like a strip of electric tape. Its purpose was to keep a small Ziploc bag attached. The bag was open. She had to act quickly. Dipping her fingers inside the bag, she touched what she thought she would, a bunch of tiny discs. It wasn't a small amount either. As her solo cup filled almost to the top, she was able to grab 3, as she had planned. She took a quick glance at the small, white, innocent-looking pills. She stopped filling her cup, stuffed the pills in her front pocket, and immediately turned around to see Lazy pulling the rack off the balls. Crazy and Hazy had been staring at her ass, but that was to be expected. They were too busy ogling her backside to notice she was in their stash of rape drugs. She never finished that third beer. She would take small sips as she played pool with her coworkers, who had become convinced her impressive performance earlier was just beginner's luck. She didn't entirely suck either. Lazy was sinking all their balls, but she played defense pretty good. She learned what a leave was and how to use it against the other team. But then, pool wasn't the game she was playing, not since she got those pills in her pocket. No. She was playing a different game entirely. A game at which she would win handily. The game she played was called Drug Them Back. As for the game of pool, the boys were into it. Each wanted to prove he was the best, of course. Was it because she was around? Probably not, but having a female in the mix never stopped a bunch of men from peacocking. All 3 would give every shot their full concentration, no matter who was shooting, thus giving Gia ample opportunity to drop a pill into each one of their unattended solo cups. Hazy's was the easiest. He actually asked her to refill his beer. This little party was going to get a lot more interesting. Lazy finally sank the 8. Crazy threw his stick on the table. I knew you guys would win. So what's next? Hazy slurred loudly. I know, Gia said out of nowhere. She was ready for this. She tried to sound a little intoxicated. Arm wrestling. The men were silent. Come on, you know you want to, Gia said, crossing her arms in that classic bodybuilder pose, exaggerating the size of her biceps. All guys want to. They just have trouble asking, so I have to make the first move. Lazy chuckled, grinning cockily at her. You understand the psychology behind this, right, Tabby? Crazy said. If we win, we beat a girl, Hazy explained. If I win, you got beat by a girl, Gia continued, adding a little slur to her speech. So what's the problem? She teetered a little and smiled at them flirtatiously. The men suddenly looked like three wolves who'd just been shown a juicy steak. "Only you're not gonna win," Crazy said with a huge grin. "I don't care how big your arms are, it's about this." Crazy wasn't the biggest guy on the block, but his arms were impressive. He lifted his left arm and flexed, sprouting a respectable cap. He pointed to the crook in his arm at spot just above the elbow. "It's about this tendon. I could beat a guy twice my size 'cause you got nothing if your tendon ain't worth shit. So let's put that tendon to the test," Gia said, smiling big, cracking her knuckles out in front of her. "You know what? Fuck arm wrestling," Lazy said, surprising her. He was the biggest of the three, and despite the fact that he did the least work, he had been genetically gifted arms that were absolutely huge. Out of the three, Lazy would pose the toughest challenge. Let's do an all-out Olympics. Gia was intrigued. A few minutes later, they were in the backyard. The previous owner had small children, and Crazy's mom never bothered to remove the makeshift playground back there. So the four of them presently faced a swing set. 3 swings. Each space between the swings was wide enough to fit one person who could hang from the bar. First event in the all-out Olympics, pull-ups.